Okay, good day everyone. This is DK from Mr. V Amps, and today we're going back and looking at the Conn ST-6. Again, this is the one I've referred to as the Led Zeppelin model just because of that model's association with the band. Of course, mine belonged to a high school, which is probably not nearly as exciting. Anyway, we have already changed a few capacitors around the motor because we were having issues with the motor stopping. That did make some improvements, but in using this over time to re-intonate a lot of my guitars, which we've been doing, there's a test where you can see how that sounds, and that improves the guitars. So in the process of re-intonating a bunch of guitars, this ST-6 has been on for quite a while, and after being on for quite a while, it was still shutting down. The motor was stopping, and the power transformer was annoyingly hot. So we wanted to deal with that, and that's generally electrolytic capacitors. We're dealing with a piece of equipment that's older than me, and capacitors, generally good capacitors will last you 35 years, and anything else you get beyond that is luck. So anybody who takes things to a vintage hi-fi shop or anything, you're probably going to have a cap job if it's a 70s unit or prior. So that said, I had to try and find parts that would work for this, and that's a challenge because this is not something they produce parts for. These are vacuum tube organ circuit parts, stuff that you would find if you were servicing vacuum tube radios originally, or organs or whatnot. So nowadays, with these CAN capacitors, there's a process of trying to stuff new radio capacitors in there or hide them somewhere else, or some kind of reconfiguring because original parts just are not available. So based on what we had, I made some decisions, got some parts in, and we're ready to go to work. So our dog here, who says I have no idea what I'm doing, is a little bit more of a joke. This is a very, very planned out thing. So let's take a spin at it and see how it goes. Okay, good afternoon. Today we're looking at the Conn ST-6 again. This thing's an adventure. You know, I said before I only want to fix what I have to fix, but the things I have to fix are mounting. It works, and as you recall before, we went in underneath this box and we changed two of the capacitors under there that assist with the motor running. That definitely assisted the motor running, and it runs now for several hours, but we still have an issue. After she'd been running for a few hours, this power transformer down here gets too warm. Not on fire, we're not blowing fuses, but it's too warm, and some errata begins to happen. What filters the main power? Big capacitors. Big electrolytic capacitors filter the power. If those things are leaking, it's stressing the power transformer. So, now what do? This is a 10 and a 10, and that is a 40 and a 40. Go try to buy those in the store. And there's really not a lot of room to put minis under there, and cutting them open and pulling all the guts out and trying to put radio caps in there just didn't seem like it was going to be easy enough to do. Okay? So what we're going to do is our 4040 is going to be replaced by this CE distribution 5050, 500 volt. The original one I think is a 470. So I got a 5050 to replace the 4040. The filter cap, that should be okay. It's going to be a little more stressful on our power transformer than a 4040 would be, but a 4040 that's in failure, definitely less stressful than that. This 1010, good luck finding a 1010. The smallest one we were able to find is a 1616. But as a filter cap, it shouldn't hurt anything. This is a 500 volter. I think the original was a 450. So I'm going to have to get creative. This one, bigger diameter. That's going to be a little bit of a issue. And then that one's the same diameter, so that'll be cool. But how do you mount those? Well, you have to think about how to mount them. Where did I put them? I got clamp rings for them. And the clamp rings are probably laying here amongst a bunch of other crap I brought down here. So we'll find the clamp rings and get them clamped on. I'm going to probably end up drilling those rivets out. I don't know what we're going to do over here, but we're going to try to figure it out. So let's get the bottom off and take a look. Okay, so welcome to the underside. We have over here, that's a 50/50 electrolytic. We're going to change that. And then here's the bottom of those two can caps. Looking in here and seeing how much space we don't have, I was thinking about, I could feed some radials down here. But imagine trying to fit 4 radial capacitors or 4 electrolytic, or not, 4 electrolytic capacitors down in this given space. Yes, it's possible, but it's just going to suck. So we're going to do the can caps on top. The ST-8 actually does have more room in it, but we're just going to start with that little one in the corner, and then we'll get the legs on these puppies disconnected. And what we're probably going to end up doing is I'm going to end up drilling the rivet out, and I'll probably want to drill that rivet whilst the one electrolytic cap is out of there, and take those cans off of there. That 10 cap, I'm concerned about the diameter of the new one. We will figure this out, I swear. Alright, okay, so here's our 10 microfarad. I took it off of the holster thing. That'll probably come off too, but it works for now. And the resistor and this lead go to one of the pluses, and then that goes to the other plus, and then the minus, which in this case is the shell of the can, but it'll be a minus thing on my other one, is going to go to the grounding bus rail there. So now I got to figure out how we're going to mount that. So let's just take a look real quick. Make an active decision. Deciding what's best for this. And now I got to see where I put the rings, because I didn't know where I put them, and then I found them, and then I put them away, and now I don't know where I put them again. They're over here. Okay. And they're still in the package. You can tell this is actual real work time and not a planned out, edited, snippet, beautiful video. This is somebody working in real time and trying to think out loud while they work. Okay, so here's our ring. How does that go? Should be too big for there. Yeah, that ring is a little too big for that one. Probably will fit the other one just fine, so we'll get creative and figure out how we're going to put that, because we need to make sure that this JJ capacitor will sit down there. Yeah. Oh boy. Actually, considering the way that all of the stuff on it goes, could probably, since there's kind of an empty spot over here, we can probably push everything kind of that way a little bit, make some space for it. We'll figure it out. Okay, so after staring at this for a few minutes, we're okay on the bottom with the leads. I can reuse one hole. Then I'll kind of have to come back here next to that tube and put another hole to put another bolt in there and hold this down. That's going to be a drag because we're close to a tube socket, and close to a tube socket means a lot of crap that we can potentially hit, nick, or damage when we go through with the drill bit. So we'll try to use a small drill bit, go really, really slow, and just top the surface and use the smallest bolt thing possible. Okay. The other thing I got to worry about is that light, because that clamp could ground out that light, so we might need to put a little piece of tape or something between it and insulation. Okay, so on second thought, I put this bolt in and I have it very, very tight, and I have no movement here whatsoever, and that other one lays between those tubes. Between those tubes are tons of capacitors and other stuff. If I drill that out, I swear I'm just asking for trouble. I've got this so absolutely tight it's not going anywhere. So if I were to just put a drop of Loctite on there and maybe a little bit of epoxy or something so that couldn't move anymore, I've got it not touching the light. Probably better just to leave well enough alone at this point. And we'll just switch and go after that one now. I'll consider this one mounted, so I'll solder it into place. Yeah, I don't like doing that, but these clamps are very thick and heavy, and they don't really bend or flex, or nothing's moving. So I think it'll work okay with just one. I know that's not standard procedure, but this is a retrofit and you gotta do what you gotta do. Okay, so it's not the prettiest, but it's not terrible. We have the two wires, the wire and the resistor going to the 1 plus, we have the other red wire going to the other plus, and we have the minus going to the ground bus. So that'll work. The pluses aren't going to ground out on the chassis, they're not close enough, so that's cool. And now we're going to go back and work on this one. Okay, so I got this out. We're going to talk about this real quick so I don't mix up. This resistor, that wire that goes to the 6x4, and this cream colored resistor here all go to one positive terminal, where the red wire, this red wire, goes to the other positive terminal, and then that big resistor goes between the two terminals. So yeah, let's mount our other one and go at it. So this is going marginally better. This capacitor kind of hugs that power transformer. She's close. It does use the original holes, and then the screw part of the clamp really hugs that tube, but it's actually not touching. Okay, so we're okay there. And then underneath I have my two positives closer to the edge here, and then the negative is closer to the grounding rail. So I should be able to solder that up, and then lastly I'll change that 50-50 back there, and we'll be back in business. I'm pretty confident in this one. I did sort of reverse which terminal was on the left and the right, but it doesn't matter because they're both positive leads of a symbiotic capacitor. Okay, so this red wire goes to this terminal, and then the roundy cream resistor here, this cream resistor goes here, this resistor goes across to there, and then this big boy connects the two positives together. That's what I saw before. It's there, it's a mirror of what was there, but it's still there. And then I had to, this wire, this goes to the negative terminal, so that goes to the grounding bus. So that should be right. So now if we change that little puppy in the corner, we should have successfully changed all the electrolytic capacitors in this thing. There's a whole bunch more of these brown caps, and I do have some caps for these, but when I checked them, I don't know. My gut says that they're still okay, and there's some of these that if I change them, I'm going to throw this thing out of calibration. So let's just do what we have to do first. Do the first things first. And I do have some 50-50 electrolytic there for that. And the other side of this, I did detach it, but the other side just goes to the ground bus. Okay, so I made a little blunder, a little one. This is 50 microfarad 25 volt DC. So this is a 50-25, and I said 50-50. But it doesn't matter because what's going in to replace it is a 50-50. That's a 50 microfarad 50 volt capacitor, and that should be just fine. You can always go up on the voltage, and on electrolytics and filter caps and stuff, you can go up a little bit on the farads, which is what we had to do up here, and I really didn't want to. I always like to try to stick with factory values, but you know, you do what you got to do. Upping the voltage will never hurt anything. So we'll put that in there, and then we'll see if it explodes. Okay, so there's our capacitor, one end going to, where the heck is my hand? Okay, there it is. One end going to ground and the other end going to the tube pin up there, just as it was before. And many times when I'm doing this, I'm trying to, undo, like the ground connection I'll undo first, because I know that goes to the ground bus, and then I'll undo whatever tube pin that was, and immediately put the positive end of this on there, because I don't want to mix anything up. Try to take pictures, try to go slow. I think we're good. We should be good. I don't believe I created any new connections that don't belong there, and I don't think we've shorted or damaged or broken anything at this point. I think we're going to be golden. So we're going to turn this on together and see if it explodes. I'll put it on the tripod so we can watch the flash, dash, and explosion all at once, if it's fun. Okay, so this is a sky cam view of the Conn ST-6. I'm going to flip the power switch and we'll see if anything explodes. I figured we wanted to keep a shot of those because those would be a spectacular explosion if it happens. Okay, so at this point it doesn't appear that anything interesting happened, other than the unit turned on and I'm seeing the calibration pattern on the screen. We'll have to adjust that, and then we'll actually check and see if it's accurate. But while we're here, let's put our finger on these caps on the top here. Obviously there's no electricity flowing through them. Or there is electricity, but there's nothing going to zap me here. So let's see if there's any heat. No abnormal heat. And obviously I don't feel any abnormal heat sources other than vacuum tubes that normally get warm anyway. So at this point I'll probably just let her sit on calibration pattern for 15 minutes or so, 15-20 minutes, and then we'll check again and see if anything got hot. What we were experiencing was after running for about 30 minutes plus, the power supply back here was, or the power transformer was getting a bit warm, not flaming warm, but too warm. You compare that to the ST-8, which I consider to be in pretty good health, being the youngest tuner. I was happy with that. I was happy with that temperature. This one I was unhappy with the temperature, and of course we were experiencing the stroboscope coming to a screeching halt. Initially, before we went after these two caps, it would come to a screeching halt in about 15 minutes. Then the number went up to about 2 hours. And this is the smoothest, quietest running motor of any of my strobes. So I don't think we have an issue with the motor. It's always capacitors. It's always capacitors, says me. So we'll just take a look at our handiwork over here. We'll move SkyCam up here and we'll look straight down on our new capacitors, and then we'll take a break and come back. So there's our two new capacitors sitting in there. Yeah, so there they are, and hopefully they will work well and give many more years of service. The 50 back here, that's a 50-50, which replaces the 40-40, and this is a 16-16, and that replaces the 1010. The 50-50 is CE Distribution's house brand, and this is a JJ Electronics. I was contemplating doing an F&T in this position too, but I think the F&T was actually even bigger and fatter, and this one just squeaks in and fits. So it is what it is, and hopefully we've got this thing revived. We'll see it in... I never thought of it. But if I put this into operate mode, that may engage some additional circuitry that's not engaged while in calibration mode. So I'm just going to put it in operate. We're just going to check for additional explosions. And nothing happened. Okay, that was exciting. But let me see if it's actually still getting signal. We'll just do a little finger on the tip of the cable. When I plug the guitar cable in, I touch. Yeah, I'm getting... Oh yeah, there's plenty of gain. She's working. We're trying to work, so... if it survives the half hour, 40 minutes, hour, well, we'll check back on it every 15 minutes to make sure nothing's getting flaming hot, but at this point our power transformer is not remotely warm. We're looking fine, and it's been about 10 minutes. Okay, so it's been about an hour, and the power transformer back here is warm, but it's not flaming hot. So that's good. And our strobe is still running. You're still spinning. We haven't stopped. So I think we're good. We're going to wait a little bit longer, and then we'll test its ability to make sure it still tunes. And if it does that, I'm going to consider this to be a successful repair. Okay, well, we're still going. That's good. It's been a while longer. I have a tuning fork. So I'm going to strike this and put it down by, it doesn't really appear to make much noise unless you, I don't know if the camera mic can hear that. No idea. But I'm going to put this tuning fork up to the microphone and we'll see what happens. Okay, and of course I touched the mic. You can actually see the stroboscope jump when I accidentally touch the mic with it. There's an A440. So that seems to be okay. Do it one more time. It's hard to find the exact angle, and of course I have the microphone down and still in the case. It's still strapped in the case. So it's hard to find exactly the correct angle to hold the tuning fork so the microphone hears it best. If you've ever tried to listen to a tuning fork, you'll realize that you really have to like put it up to your ear at a certain angle to hear it well. But when the microphone hears it, it looks like calibration is pretty darn close. Yeah, calibration is really good. That's really good. So apparently calibrating like I just did with the 60 Hertz out of the ball gives you a pretty good A440. Who knew? Well, apparently Conn knew, because that's how they told you how to do it. Reading the calibration pattern on this is not super easy, so the tuning fork having one of these is probably nice. And I got one of these because I'm going to tune a piano now. Mind you, I am not a piano tuner. I'm an idiot who has stuff like this with him and am fearless. So taking a piano that is already in need of tuning, and I have one of these, and all I needed was a wrench and some felt pads. We're going to see how that turns out. That's what these things were intended for in the first place, right? Tuning pianos. But you can technically tune on anything with it. That's why they were in all the band rooms everywhere. So, yeah, I think she's good. The power transformer on there is very warm, but it's not killing anybody. I can touch it without screaming and crying. And been running for well over an hour, so I think I've got victory here. Achieved victory. Cool. So our new capacitors are capacitoring, or doing what they're supposed to do. And we'll take a look at the final result and then we'll button it up. Okay, so here's the summary of what was performed on our Conn Sturbo tuner here. The 4040 double capacitor, filter capacitor, was replaced by a 5050, just because that was what was available. The 1010 was replaced with a 1616, again because that was what was available. We were able to generally work out the wiring underneath, and the 50 microfarad 25 volt electrolytic capacitor there was replaced with a 50 volt 50 microfarad capacitor. And changing the electrolytics has not appeared to affect the calibration of this unit. It appears to still work correctly, and we are not experiencing the belly flop that it would do after running for an hour or so, which initially changing those motor run capacitors seemed to assist with, particularly that Black Beauty paper thing. So I think we're ready to work. Now, mind you, if some of these brown capacitors, which are hiding absolutely everywhere, hopefully you remember from earlier in the video, if I flashlight this, you'll see these brown capacitors everywhere. If they decide to misbehave, I have some red, well, those are the old ones I pulled before. There's some red and orange capacitors there waiting to take their place. Those are all the capacitors that are not considered the calibration values. There are some in here that were specifically picked out at the factory for calibrating this unit's switch from node to node. And if I change those, then I'm going to have to do some calibration procedures that I don't have the information on how to do. So that would suck. But most of the caps are like 0.01s, 0.02s. There was one that I believe was a 0.039, or I think it was 0.039, and that's going to be replaced by a 0.04 because that's the closest value we can currently get. But some of those are real oddball values, so if we have to, we'll go do some polycaps. But the electrolytics are usually the big dog when you got an old piece of equipment. The electrolytics and the wax capacitors, which these are not wax, these are a molded capacitor. I'm fairly confident there's some kind of plastic in there. And plastic capacitors usually hold up. It's the paper ones that take a dump. And if you recall, when I was up in there before, we changed the plastic Goodall, and that didn't seem to do doodly squat, but when we changed that Black Beauty, which is more likely paper, that seems to have helped. So I'm going to put the bottom back on this, put it back in the case, and call it victory. Then again, I called it victory once before and was sadly mistaken after this thing had an hour or so to run. So we've let it run a long, long time, and it still recognizes the A440 from the tuning fork. Pretty dang good. I'm kinda happy. Are you kinda happy? Be happy. Thanks, bye.